Hello, my name is Kraus and I'm a biochemist, and tonight we're going to be talking about blood pressure problems. Now, this is a series I give of seminars that deal with cause and prevention of disease. And I only talk about symptoms so that you can understand what you're doing wrong in your lifestyle that leads to weakness, sickness, and disease. As far as I'm concerned, when our Creator made our bodies, He did a good job. And He created it with every potential for health in it. In other words, there's a program in our body for health, to keep us healthy and to keep us energetic and at 100% vitality. And if we don't have that vitality, then that means there's something wrong in our lifestyle. Instead of blaming weakness, sickness, and disease on something that's coming after us and we have no choice, we need to start taking responsibility for our health and recognize that there's things that we're doing in our lifestyle that are allowing these problems to take place. And blood pressure problems is just another one of those problems that show up when there's a problem in our lifestyle. So let's talk a little bit about the basics, and then we'll talk about what blood pressure problems are, and then what causes them, and then what we can do to help the body overcome them and hopefully prevent them from happening if you don't have them. So first, let's look at the basics. To have 100% vitality, it requires that we obey two laws. One of them is that we put in as much energy as we take out. When you start taking more energy out than you're putting in, that's the day you're losing vitality. You might not feel that way, but you are losing vitality that very moment that you start taking out more energy than you're putting in. So your vitality is equal to that potential, that reserve energy. And you're born with a certain amount. Your parents gave that to you. And that's supposed to last you approximately 120 years. So for that to last you 120 years, it requires that you put in what you're taking out. And that's fair, isn't it? That's what we got to have. So that's one of the laws, that we must make sure our lifestyle lines up with that principle. Then another thing we need to do is keep these temples clean. When this body doesn't get its cleansing like it should, it builds up obstructions. And we define an obstruction as anything that interferes with the circulation of our blood. When our blood can't carry the energy to the cells, then the cells lose vitality, and then we lose vitality. So anything that interferes with the circulation of the blood to any of our cells is a direct loss in the vitality. So the two laws, we must put in what we take out. And the energy we put in is breathing energy, rest energy, water energy, and then food energy. And so the most important energy that we run on is breathing. And really everything that your body does, and whatever you do in your lifestyle, the key is to make sure that the breathing is not interfered with, because that is your life source. And that is the breath of life that our Creator breathed into our forefathers way back, our forefather Adam, way back at the beginning of time. And he had a beautiful body, a body that was perfect, but he didn't become alive until his Creator breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. So it's the ability of these bodies to breathe that gives it vitalness, vitality. And anything that interferes with that is a loss of vitality, is going to result in weakness, sickness, and disease. So we need rest, we need water, we need breathing, and we need the right kind of foods. And we need a lifestyle that makes sure our body gets those things. And then we need to make sure that the body stays clean. Now let's zero in on this problem called blood pressure problems. When we think of pressure, what comes to your mind? Work? Family? Your children? Your dog, your cat? You know? Making ends meet as far as finances. Boy, these pressures are just coming on me, you know? So most of the times when we think of pressure, we think of things that are pressuring us and causing us to what? What happens when you're under pressure? Too much pressure. What happens to your body? Yeah, your body just kind of tightens up, and you feel like that's where they came up with that name, pressure. Is because pressure doesn't make you relax, does it? When you're under pressure, you don't go, "Ooh, this is nice." You know, when you're under pressure, you get tight. You know, you get really tight, and so we can get too much pressure, and it is possible not to have enough pressure. But when we talk about going to the doctor or going somewhere or checking our pressure ourselves, boy, your pressure's high. And a lot of people have low blood pressure too. But most of the time we think of high blood pressure problems, you know. And so what are some of the symptoms of high blood pressure or low blood pressure? Well, high blood pressure, some of the symptoms, of course, that they're concerned about is that if your pressure gets too high, then you could break an artery, a vein, capillaries break, you get these little red places in your body. High blood pressure, varicose veins, sometimes they call them spiders, usually get them in the legs, sometimes in the feet, where you can see it, it's red, and the veins are popping out. That's high blood pressure, right, if they're popping out. On the other hand, some people, they try to go get a blood sample and you can't find their veins. Let's try here. Oh, sorry, I missed. They poke around and they try to make you do this to build up that pressure, and so they can find a vein to get a blood sample. Some people's blood pressure is so low they can't find one. Okay? Now, every weakness and disease and symptom that a person has is a blood pressure problem when you get right down to it. You can't have cancer, diabetes, or any other type of problem that you can name, and there not be a blood pressure problem involved in it or as a part of that symptom. But the main thing they're thinking about is hypertension and problems like that. But blood pressure problems are mainly concerned about you're going to die of a heart attack when that pressure gets too high. So they like you to check it or get it checked. Of course, everybody's so paranoid about it, just going to the doctor makes the pressure go up. Because if you're under stress, remember, the pressure is going to go up if it can. So how do you know when a person's under stress? When you're under stress, your pressure is definitely going to be higher than when you're not under pressure, under stress from your circumstances or your lifestyle. All right? So being overweight is a high blood pressure problem, but you check your pressure points. Your pressure might be low in your left arm is usually where they check it. But if you're gaining weight, it's because gaining the weight in your body's stretching. So the pressure's not reading high because you're stretching. So you're relieving the pressure, right? It's when people can't gain weight and stretch that their pressure's going to, when they're under pressure, their pressure's going to show higher at that particular time. Okay? A lot of people have normal blood pressure. It's really high for them. because they have low blood pressure problems. Now, low blood pressure problems can act like symptoms being cold all the time. You know, their temperature is usually low, and circulation is usually slow when their pressure's low blood pressure. When it's high blood pressure, usually your temperature's higher normally, except it can cause poor circulation problems too. But you're usually red-faced, and when your pressure goes up, you ever notice when someone's under pressure that they got red face, especially when they get mad when they're under pressure? They're really upset about something, they get red in the face. So that pressure's building up, you know. See, another thing people don't realize with blood pressure problems is that you can have high blood pressure in one part of your body and not another. In other words, you could have some parts of your body low blood pressure and other parts of your body high blood pressure. Now, whenever you have pain, that's going to usually be high blood pressure in that area where you're having the pain. Headaches are high blood pressure in the head. So when you're having a headache, you're building pressure up in the head. All right? You could have in your ears. You ever have your eyes just feel like they're going to explode? High blood pressure in your eyes, you have problems seeing reading. When you're trying to read a book and you have high blood pressure in your eyes, you're farsighted, which means you can't see close up because your eyes are bulging under pressure. And so when you look at something, they won't zoom in so you can see it. Now, if you have low blood pressure in your eyes, then you can't focus in the distance because low blood pressure, your eyes stay too contracted. There's not enough pressure to push out so you can zoom like a camera, zoom out to long distance. Now, some have sometimes low and sometimes high, so they have bifocals. So they can get some help to look far and short. And even then, they got to bring things up and back. So see, that's a pressure problem when we have eyesight problems, see? And of course, we give all kinds of names, right? To help out with those particular things. But that really is a blood pressure problem. When your ring gets too tight, you know, in your hands, that's high blood pressure. What about when your feet, your shoes feel tight, you know? And your feet are swollen. That's high blood pressure, see? That's a blood pressure problem. And that could happen anywhere in your body. And of course, if it happens in your arteries, because they're all clogged up, then the blood can't get through those arteries. Maybe cholesterol's building up in those arteries. Well, then it builds up pressure because the blood can't get around like it should. If the kidneys can't filter the blood, every 23 seconds your blood's going through your kidneys because the kidneys have the responsibility of balancing the blood chemistry and helping to keep the blood clean. So what if the kidneys aren't letting that blood come through every 23 seconds? Well, then it's going to raise your pressure. It's going to cause a pressure increase in your body. All right? So that can be a lot of problems taking place there, or a lot of causes as it relates to the kidneys themselves. All right? So there's all these different particular symptoms that people have. As I said, there's not, if the pressure gets too high anywhere in your body, that's going to cause an interference or an obstruction. That's going to interfere with that part of the body doing its job. And so they can give a name to that symptom. But we have to learn to deal with the cause. There's a lifestyle problem. And we need to find out what it is and deal with it. So let's now, unless you have a particular blood pressure problem other than ones I've mentioned, let's move on then to defining what we mean by pressure, high and low pressure. Okay? As it relates to the body, we're going to call high blood pressure problems in your body are taking place when your body's pressure on the inside of the body is pushing out more than the pressure outside of your body's pushing in. In other words, for you to have a perfect body pressure system, the pressure on the outside pushing in on your body must equal the pressure on the inside pushing out. That's what a blood pressure problem is. No one ever asks, well, what is a blood pressure problem? Well, it means a heart. Well, what is it? I don't know. You know, but normally there's a gravitation, magnetic pressure in our environment in which we live. And it's created by the rotation of the sun and the moon and all the stars that our Creator put up there. Because in 5 days, our Creator made this earth inhabitable for His created man. And so He created with the idea that these bodies would be able to operate in that kind of environment. So as the earth hangs on nothing, as the scripture says, the sun and the moon and the stars are all revolving around it, and it creates a magnetic or gravitational pressure. Okay? And it comes out to, on the average, 14 pounds per square inch is pushing in on your bodies, on everything in our environment. So for every square inch of your body, think of 14 pounds pushing in. All right, that's quite a push. All right, 14 pounds, just lift 14 pounds of something to get a kind of feel of how much. Try to hang up 14 pounds, just lift up and hold it for very long. You know, that's like a newborn baby's maybe about 9 pounds. Carry a newborn baby, you know, think of a 14-pound baby. And every square inch of your body, there's 14 pounds pushing in on it. Now you've got to push out. If you don't push out 14 pounds per square inch, what's going to happen? You're going to be crushed. You're going to be pushed in too far. Now that's what we're going to call low blood pressure problems. All right? When you're pushing out more than that 14 pounds per square inch, that's high blood pressure. All right? Now, your body has to be able to adjust to those fluctuations in the pressure, different pressures that you are involved in when you're traveling or go from one part of the country to another part of the country. Let's take the extremes. If you were to go into outer space, how much pressure would your body be? How much would be pushing in on your body in outer space? Be zero. Be no pressure. That's why they're weightless. They just float in the air. There's no pressure pushing them down, let alone pushing in on them. So they have to have space suits that they put pressure in order to keep their body from doing this. You ever see any of those movies where they rip a hole in the space suit and what happens to them? They get big and their eyeballs and then pop. Because too much pressure on the inside is pushing out as they're breathing, and there's no pressure pushing in, so they just exploded. Now the other extreme, if you go into the deepest sea, what's going to happen to the pressure? Okay, the pressure goes up the deeper you go into the ocean. So they have to have space suits that won't let that pressure increase, because if pressure increases too much, then you can't push it out. And what it'll do, it'll crush you. And you just get, the pressure builds up to the point where your body can't, the circulation, your body's so tight, nothing can move in it. Your lungs can't move, you can't breathe, nothing, see? So, those are the two extreme pressure problems. But just going to the mountains, let's say you're just going to take a vacation to the mountains, and you have high blood pressure, which means your pressure pushing out is greater than the pressure pushing in, and you're going to go to the mountains. Are you going to feel better? Are your pressure problems going to be improved or not improved when you go to the mountains? Well, when you go to the mountains, is your pressure lower there or higher?
Lower.
It's lower, isn't it? Because you're getting closer to outer space. All right? So you're going to go to the mountains and you have high blood pressure, then your pressure is going to increase even more going to the mountains. So you won't like that. You won't like that high altitude stuff. You're going to want to get in that lake or go down by sea level somewhere. See, because there you got higher pressure, like in a canyon, going in these canyons, because it's going to push in and help support that high blood pressure and even out the pressure in your body, and you're going to feel better. So there's ways that you can manipulate just by going, but who wants to always have to move around? Especially if you got some parts of your body with high blood pressure and some parts that are low, you're going to leave the leg over in the mountains and take the other leg over to stick it in the water, so that you could stay balanced. See, that's not what we should have to do. Our body, if it's healthy and vital, it can go to the mountains, it could go to the lake, and it should be able to adjust either way if our body's healthy. See, but if there's something wrong with the body, then we have problems adjusting just to our environment. Now, we have weather changes that affect the blood, the pressure. Our body has to adjust to different pressures, not only where we travel, but when weather systems travel into our area where we live. So when you listen to the weather report and it says a low's coming in. Low what?
Pressure.
Low pressure. And what usually accompanies low pressure? As far as the weather, there's storms, isn't there? It's going to rain. It's going to get cloudy for sure when the low's coming in. And now when the high comes in, when the high pressure comes in, what's going to happen usually to the weather? The sky's clear, don't they? So you got a little bit of a high today. And they'll say the barometric pressure is rising, or it's lowering, or it's steady. We feel kind of better if it's steady, but when it makes its change high or low, sometimes people have more problems. So when a low's coming in, low pressure, then a person with high blood pressure problems isn't going to feel too high, is he? Because he's already pushing out too much, and now the pressure's going even further down on the outside. So there's less pressure pushing in on a person when a low's coming in. So their high pressure's even higher. All right? But a low comes in, or high comes in, it's pushing in on them more than 14 pounds per square inch. So their higher pressure that's pushing out is going to be helped when a high comes in. So when the pressure goes up, the temperatures are not, doesn't have anything to do with temperatures necessarily, but the sky's clear and the pressure's higher, they feel better. Well, here comes that low in there. They're just depressed, and their body's depressed, and their body's depressed because the pressure's building up. So weather changes have a lot to do with blood pressure problems. Now we have a monthly something that happens that affects our pressure. What comes around every month and it's full? The moon. See, the moon, when we can see it when it's full, where the sun reflects off of it so we see it full, that's when the pressure is greater. In other words, our atmosphere in which we live in, the pressure in it is much greater during that full moon than when it's a new moon, or when we don't see any reflection of the sun on the moon. Okay, in fact, the earth actually contracts during a full moon, the pressure, because of that pressure increase. So you can take like 3 truckloads of dirt out during a full moon, or during a new moon, when the earth is kind of relaxed more, because there's less pressure pushing it in. And that only takes 1 truck to haul out during a full moon. That's a lot of extra dirt. It's a lot of extra weight too. Just dig a hole during a new moon and see what happens, and save the dirt and see what happens when you put it back into the hole during a new moon. And have some fun that way, to see and get a picture of how much more pressure there is during a full moon phase. And that's why people that, especially with low blood pressure, where they're already having problems pushing out, and here comes a full moon, they're tightening up even more, and they can't even push out enough as it is. Okay? So during a full moon, a lot of people, especially with low blood pressure problems, those symptoms of that, poor circulation and everything, are going to be much greater during that particular time. Okay? So those are some of the variables that cause, and again, if our body's doing its job, so if our body is healthy, vital, and we're putting in what we take out, so our reserves are where they should be for our age, and we're keeping our temples clean, we're getting our rest and our water and our breathing and the right kinds of foods, then see, the body will be able to adjust to these changes in weather and changes in places that we travel to, and things like that. Now pressure, our lifestyle, our work schedule, and our relationships with other people also can create pressure problems too. As we mentioned earlier, when we're mad at somebody, the pressure goes up in our body. We're angry with somebody, the pressure goes up. When we're worried about something, the pressure goes up, comparatively speaking, from what it would be otherwise. So there's a lot of these emotional things that we go through as we relate to each other as human beings, as also we relate to our jobs and financial pressures and all these other